The night air bit like teeth. Wind whipped down the narrow streets of the city, stealing warmth from anyone foolish enough to be outside past midnight. Rain wasn't falling yet, but the sky hung low and heavy, promising it soon would. Streetlights cast long, lonely shadows over cracked sidewalks and shuttered storefronts. Most people were tucked inside, draped in blankets, watching TV. Sipping hot tea, safe, dry, warm, but not everyone. He stepped out of the hospital's back entrance. Collar turned up against the chill, shoulders tight from 12 straight hours in surgery. His coat was expensive but worn at the elbows, and his eyes tired, deep-set. Sharp scanned the empty street out of habit. He wasn't used to walking alone at this hour anymore. Success had insulated him. Town car service, security badge, private parking. But tonight, his car wouldn't start, and the rideshare app kept glitching. So he walked. Just 3 blocks to the garage where his backup vehicle sat. His mind was still in recovery room 3, reviewing vitals, double-checking post-op orders, mentally replaying the way the tiny heart had fluttered under his fingers just hours before. He was good at this. One of the best. People said so. Awards lined his office. Photographs with mayors and governors hung in frames, but right now none of that mattered. All that mattered was getting home, pouring a glass of water, letting his brain shut off for a few hours. Then he heard it. A sound so quiet, so fragile, it almost got lost in the wind. Save. My brother. He stopped. At first he thought it was the wind playing tricks. Or maybe a stray cat. But Noette came again. Please. Save my brother. His eyes followed the voice. Tucked into the recess of a closed-down bakery, half hidden behind a dumpster, sat 2 small shapes. One curled tightly around the other. The bigger one, a girl, looked up at him with wide, glassy eyes. Her clothes were thin, soaked through in places, and far too big. A man's old hoodie, jeans held up by a piece of rope. Her bare feet were red and raw. She couldn't have been more than 12. In her arms, she cradled a boy, much smaller, maybe 7 or 8. His face was pale, almost gray, and his lips had a faint blue tint. He wasn't moving, not shivering, not crying, just still. The doctor's instincts kicked in before his thoughts could catch up. He knelt. Didn't think about germs or protocol or liability. Just knelt. Hey, he said softly, voice rough from exhaustion, but gentle. What's your name? The girl swallowed hard. Her hands trembled as they clutched her brother tighter. Maya, she whispered. And him? Eli, she said. Then her voice cracked. He won't wake up. He's been like this since this morning. I tried to keep him warm. I gave him my jacket. But he's so cold. And he won't talk. He hasn't talked in days. The doctor reached out, slow and calm, and pressed 2 fingers to the boy's neck. A pulse faint, fast. But there. He lifted one of Eli's eyelids. Pupils reactive, but sluggish. Skin dry, despite the cold. Lips chapped and split. How long have you been out here? He asked. Maya looked away. A while. He didn't push. He'd seen enough in his years to know that a while could mean anything from 2 nights to 2 months. He'd treated kids with frostnip after 1 night in the cold. He'd held the hands of teenagers who'd lived under bridges for years, surviving on scraps and hope. What happened to your parents? He asked gently. My mom. She's gone, Maya said, voice flat. Dad. He left. Said he'd be back. Never came. The doctor nodded. Said nothing. Judgment wouldn't help anyone right now. He looked at Eli again. This wasn't just cold. This was something deeper. Dehydration. Malnutrition, probably. Maybe infection. The silence worried him most. Kids don't just stop talking unless something's broken inside or out. We need to get him to a hospital, he said. Maya's eyes filled with tears. They won't take us, she said quickly. Last time we went, they called the police. Took us to a shelter. Then split us up. I couldn't find him for 2 days. I won't leave him again. Not ever. Her voice was fierce, defiant, but underneath it all was pure terror. The kind that comes from knowing the world has already failed you once. You're on your own. The doctor understood that look. He'd worn it himself once, decades ago. Standing in a different city, in different shoes. Waiting for anyone to see him not as a problem, but as a person. He stood up slowly, then unzapped his coat and draped it over Eli's small body. Maya flinched, as if expecting him to grab the boy and run. "I'm a doctor," he said. "I work at the children's hospital 3 blocks that way. I'm not calling the police. I'm not taking you anywhere you don't want to go. But your brother needs help right now. If we don't get him warm and checked out, he could get much worse." Maya stared at him, searching his face, looking for lies, for traps. For the moment, adults always broke their promises. He held her gaze, didn't blink, didn't look away. Finally, she nodded just once. He crouched again, slid his arms carefully under Eli's limp body. The boy was frighteningly light, like holding a bundle of twigs wrapped in cloth. He lifted him gently, cradling him against his chest, and pulled his coat tighter around the small frame. "Hold on to my coat," he told Maya. She did. Gripping the fabric with icy fingers, they walked slowly down the street, the wind howling around them like a warning. Every step felt heavy, not from the weight of the boy, but from the weight of the choice he'd just made. He was breaking every rule, taking home strangers, bypassing intake, risking his license, maybe even his job. But standing there in that moment, watching a child beg for her brother's life with nothing but her voice and her love, there was no real choice at all. Streetlights flickered overhead as they approached the hospital's emergency entrance. A security guard stepped out, hand on his radio. "Doctor," he began.
"Oh."
Then saw the boy in the doctor's arms and the girl clinging to his side. His expression shifted instantly. "You need a gurney?" "Pediatric." Now," the doctor said, voice firm but calm. "Hypothermia, possible dehydration, unresponsive. Get Dr. Chen on call." The guard nodded and rushed ahead, barking into his radio. Inside the ER buzzed with controlled chaos, nurses moving fast. Monitors beeping, a baby crying somewhere down the hall. But when they saw the doctor carrying in a child, the room seemed to hold its breath for a second. "Room 4, a nurse called." Already pulling back the curtain, they laid Eli on the bed. Warm blankets appeared. And 4 started oxygen, temperature probes. The team moved like a well-rehearsed orchestra, and he stepped back, giving them space. But never taking his eyes off the boy, Maya stood frozen near the door, arms wrapped around herself, eyes darting between her brother and the strangers surrounding him. She looked ready to bolt. He walked over slowly. "They're helping him," he said. "You're safe here. No one's taking you anywhere." She bit her lip. "Can I stay with him?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "You can stay right by his side." A nurse brought her a chair, a blanket, a cup of warm apple juice. Maya took it with trembling hands, never looking away from Eli. Over the next hour, vitals stabilized. Eli's temperature rose slowly. He remained unconscious, but his breathing evened out. The doctor reviewed labs as they came in: low sodium, low blood sugar, signs of chronic malnutrition. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but nothing good either. He pulled a stool up beside Maya. "Your brother's going to be okay," he said quietly. "He's weak, but his body's fighting. He just needs time and care." Maya finally looked at him. "Why are you helping us?" The question hung in the air. He thought about it. Thought about the scholarship that saved him. The teacher who stayed after school to help him study. The resident who saw his potential when others saw only a kid from the wrong side of town. "Because once," he said slowly, "someone helped me when I had no one else." She didn't say anything, just nodded, then leaned her head against the edge of the hospital bed, watching her brother breathe. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall soft, steady, washing the city clean. Inside, under harsh fluorescent lights and the hum of machines, something small but powerful had begun. Trust, hope, a chance. The doctor stayed. Not because it was his shift. Not because it was his job. But because in that moment he knew this wasn't just about saving a boy's life, it was about saving something in himself, too. And as the night wore on, with Maya finally asleep in the chair and Eli's fingers twitching slightly under the blanket, he made a silent promise not to the system, not to the hospital, but to these two kids shivering in the dark: "You won't be forgotten." He didn't know how yet, didn't know what it would cost, but he knew, deep in his bones, that walking away wasn't an option. Anymore, not this time, not ever again. Morning light crept through the blinds of the hospital room, pale and thin, like it wasn't sure it belonged there yet. Eli hadn't woken up, but his breathing was steadier now, his color better. The blue tint around his lips had faded to just a ghost of what it was the night before. Nurses came and went quietly, checking vitals, adjusting for lines, writing notes on clipboards. The machines beeped in a rhythm that had become almost comforting. Maya hadn't moved from the chair. She sat with her knees pulled to her chest, eyes fixed on her brother, like if she blinked too long he might vanish. She hadn't eaten the toast the nurse brought her, hadn't touched the juice. She just watched. Waited. The doctor came in just after 7. He'd gone home for a few hours, showered, changed into clean scrubs, but sleep had been impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those two shapes huddled in the doorway, the girl's desperate eyes, the boy's stillness. So he came back early. He sat beside Maya, not too close, giving her space. "How are you holding up?" he asked. She shrugged, didn't look at him. "He's not talking. Still weak," he said gently. "His body's been through a lot. Sometimes it takes time to wake up all the way. He hasn't talked in months," she whispered. "Not since Mom died." It caught him off guard. He'd assumed the silence was from last night's ordeal. But months? That changed things. "Not a word?" he asked. Maya shook her head. "He used to talk all the time. Loved telling stories. Made up songs about bugs and clouds. But after the funeral, he just stopped. Like someone turned off a switch." He studied Eli again. The stillness wasn't just fatigue. It was deeper. Something had shut down inside him, not just from cold or hunger, but from loss. From grief so heavy a child couldn't carry it, so he buried it instead. Later that morning, a woman in a navy blue blazer, arrived, social worker, badge clipped to her shirt pocket. Her name was Linda. She had kind eyes, but a no-nonsense walk. She introduced herself to Maya, spoke softly, asked simple questions. Where had they been staying? Did they have any relatives? Was there anyone looking for them? Maya answered in short sentences, eyes darting to the door like she expected someone to burst in and take her away. "We were at Mr. Ruiz's place for a while," she said. "Above the laundromat. But he got sick. Couldn't pay rent. We had to leave." "Anyone else?" Linda asked. Maya shook her head. "No aunts? Uncles? Family friends?" "No." Linda wrote something down. Then she leaned forward slightly. "Do you know where your father is?" Maya's shoulders tensed. "He left. Said he'd come back with money. That was 3 months ago." Linda didn't push. She just nodded, jotting more notes. "We'll try to locate him," she said. "But until then, you and Eli will need a safe place to stay." Maya's breath hitched. "Together?" "We'll do our best," Linda said carefully. But Maya knew what do our best meant. It meant maybe, maybe not. In her short life, maybe had usually meant no. After Linda left, the doctor stayed. He watched Maya chew on her thumbnail, eyes glassy with fear. "They're going to split us up," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I won't let that happen," he said. She looked at him, skeptical. "You don't even know us." "I know enough," he said. "And I know that keeping you two together is the best thing for Eli right now." He meant it. In medicine, you treat the whole person, not just the fever or the wound, but the heart, the mind, the connections that hold someone together. For Eli, Maya wasn't just a sister. She was his anchor. His voice, when his own had gone quiet. By midday, Eli stirred, just a little. His fingers twitched. His eyelids fluttered. Maya dropped to her knees beside the bed, whispering his name over and over. Eli. Eli, it's me. I'm here. You're okay. His eyes opened, just slits at first, unfocused. Then they landed on Maya. A flicker of recognition. A tiny sigh escaped his lips. He didn't speak, but his hand reached out, weak and slow, and found hers. Tears spilled down Maya's cheeks. She held his hand like it was the most precious thing in the world. The doctor stepped back, letting them have the moment. But his mind was already racing. Eli's body was recovering, yes, but his silence, his months-long withdrawal, that wasn't normal trauma response. Not entirely. There was something else going on. Something neurological, maybe? Or psychological so deep it was manifesting physically, that afternoon. He ordered blood work, a full metabolic panel, even a basic EEG to check brain activity. But what he really wanted was an MRI. He needed to see inside Eli's head, to rule out anything structural, a tumor, a bleed, a malformation. But his 4 kids weren't simple. They required sedation, approval, insurance, and for 2 homeless minors with no legal guardian, it was a mountain of paperwork. He called the head of radiology himself. I need a brain scan on a pediatric patient. Unresponsive for months, sudden worsening last night. Possible organic cause for mutism. There was a pause on the other end. Do we have consent? I'm handling it, he said. Just hold the slot. I'll get the forms. He hung up before they could push back. Then he went to find Linda. I need emergency imaging for the boy, he told her. There's a chance something physical is causing his silence. If we wait, we could miss something serious. Linda hesitated. Without a guardian, consent is tricky. And the system's overloaded. It could take days. Days he might not have, the doctor said evenly. Look, he's stable now, yes. But if there's a slow-growing mass or an undiagnosed seizure disorder, every hour counts. I'm not asking. I'm telling you, this needs to happen today. Linda studied him. She'd worked with him before. Knew he wasn't dramatic. Knew when he spoke like this, it was real. I'll file an emergency petition, she said finally. But you'll have to sign off as the treating physician. And if Child Services questions it, I'll take responsibility, he said. Back in the room, Maya was feeding Eli spoonfuls of broth. He was drinking it slowly, eyes tracking her every move. Still silent, but present. That was something. The doctor sat down. Eli needs a special test today, he told Maya. It's like a camera that takes pictures of his brain. It'll help us understand why he's not talking. Maya's eyes widened. Will it hurt him? No, he'll sleep through it. You'll be right outside the room the whole time. She bit her lip, then nodded. Okay. The scan was scheduled for late afternoon. As they wheeled Eli down the hall, Maya walked beside the gurney, holding his hand until the last possible second. The doctor walked with her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder when she started to panic. He's in good hands, he said. And so are you. The MRI took nearly an hour. The doctor waited in the radiology viewing room, arms crossed, staring at the screen as images of Eli's brain appeared slice by slice. At first, everything looked normal, smooth folds, clear ventricles, no bleeding. Then, on the thalamus, near the speech center, he saw it. A shadow. Small but distinct. Round, well-defined, not a bleed. Not scar tissue. A tumor, slow-growing, benign maybe. But pressing right where it shouldn't. His stomach dropped. It explained everything: the mutism, the fatigue, the recent collapse. The tumor had been growing quietly, stealing Eli's voice, his energy, his ability to stay warm. And now, it was urgent. He didn't waste a second. He called neurosurgery, pulled up Eli's full chart, and began assembling a team. Pediatric neuro-oncology consult, anesthesia. They'd need to operate. Soon, but first, he had to tell Maya. He found her in the waiting area, pacing like a caged bird. She ran to him the moment she saw him. What did it show? She asked, voice shaking. He knelt so he was at her eye level. Eli's brain has something in it as small growth. It's not from an injury. It's been there a while. It's pressing on the part that helps him talk and move. Maya's face went pale. Is it cancer? We don't think so, he said gently. It looks like it's slow growing, but it needs to be removed. If we don't, it could get bigger and cause more problems, maybe even stop his heart or breathing. Her eyes filled with tears. Can you fix it? Yes, he said, with more confidence than he felt. Our team can, but it's surgery, and it's risky. Not extremely, but any brain surgery carries risk. She didn't cry. She just stared at the floor for a long moment. Then she looked up, jaw set. Do it, she said. Please, I'll do anything. I'll give my blood. My eyes. Just save him. He put a hand on her arm. You don't have to give anything but your love. That's already helping him more than you know. Back in Eli's room, the boy was awake again, staring out the window at the gray sky. Rain had started falling softly. Maya climbed onto the bed beside him, wrapped her arms around him carefully, and whispered in his ear. They're going to make you better, she said. You're going to talk again? I know it. Eli didn't respond, but he leaned into her, his small body relaxing against hers. The doctor stood in the doorway watching them. He thought about the odds, the risks, the legal hurdles ahead. Thought about how he'd have to fight for surgery approval without a legal guardian. How he'd need to explain this to hospital administration. How child services might pull the kids before the operation even happened. But then he looked at Maya, 12 years old. Homeless Scared-On saw the way she held her brother like he was the only thing keeping her on this earth. And he knew he couldn't walk away. Not now. Not ever. That night, after rounds, he sat at his desk and started drafting a petition. Not just for the surgery, but for temporary guardianship. It was unprecedented. Probably foolish. But he didn't care, because in that hospital room, something had shifted. This wasn't just a case anymore. It was a calling, and as rain tapped gently against the window, he made another promise, one he'd keep no matter the cost. I will not let them lose each other, not while he still had breath in his lungs. The hospital buzzed with a different kind of energy. The next morning, calm on the surface, but underneath currents of urgency moved fast. Eli had been moved to a quieter wing, prepped for what came next. The tumor was real. The plan was real. But nothing could happen without permission. Permission was tangled in red tape thicker than winter coats. Maya hadn't slept. She'd stayed curled on the spare bed in Eli's room, eyes open long after the lights dimmed, listening to every beep, every breath. When a nurse came in at dawn to check vitals, Maya was already sitting up, knees drawn to her chest, watching her brother like a soldier on watch. He smiled in his sleep, she told the nurse quietly. Just for a second, like he was dreaming of Mom. The nurse smiled softly, patted her shoulder. That's a good sign. But Maya knew smiles weren't enough. She needed words. She needed him to call her name again. The doctor arrived early, still in yesterday's scrubs, coffee in hand. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp, focused. He'd spent half the night on the phone, first with the hospital's legal team, then with a retired judge who used to sit on the ethics board, then with a former patient who now ran a children's health foundation. By 3 a.m., he'd secured a promise. If the hospital approved emergency surgery, the foundation would cover every cost. Now came the harder part, getting approval. He sat beside Maya again. Just like the day before, we found what's making Eli sick, he said gently. It's something in his brain, a small growth. It's not spreading like cancer, but it's in a spot that's stopping him from talking, from staying strong. Maya nodded slowly. And you can take it out? Yes, but it's brain surgery. It's serious. He'll be asleep the whole time. The team is one of the best in the country. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Will he wake up after? He should. Most kids do. But there's always a small chance something could go wrong. His brain's been under pressure for a while. We don't know how it'll respond. She stared at her hands. Then, without looking up, she said, I want him to have the surgery. The doctor hesitated. Maya, you're not his legal guardian. You're his sister, and you love him more than anyone. But the hospital needs someone over 18 to sign the papers. Her head snapped up. Then you sign them, she said, eyes blazing. You're the one who found us. You're the one who brought him here. You're the only one who's tried to help. He didn't answer right away. He wanted to. Every part of him did. But rules were rules. Or so he'd always believed. That afternoon, a meeting was called in the hospital's ethics conference room. Doctors, nurses, lawyers, social workers, all seated around a long table, papers stacked neatly, water bottles unopened. Maya wasn't invited. She waited outside with a hospital volunteer who gave her crayons and a coloring book she didn't touch. Inside, voices rose and fell. He's a minor with no legal guardian, said the hospital attorney. We can't proceed without court approval or a temporary custodian. We don't have time for court, the doctor shot back. The tumor is compressing his thalamus. Every day we wait increases the risk of permanent damage or worse. And if something goes wrong during surgery? Another voice asked. Who's liable? I am, the doctor said flatly. Put my name on every form. I'll accept full responsibility. Silence filled the room. Then Linda, the social worker, spoke up. I've been in this system 20 years. I've seen kids fall through cracks because we waited for paperwork while their bodies failed. This boy has one person fighting for him, his sister. And now, a doctor who's willing to step up? If we don't act, we're choosing bureaucracy over a child's life. The room stayed quiet for a long moment. Finally, the ethics chair sighed. We'll authorize emergency surgery under compassionate grounds. But you'll need to file for temporary guardianship by tomorrow morning. Otherwise, post-op care gets complicated. The doctor nodded. I'll do it. He walked out of the meeting and straight to Maya. She stood up the second she saw his face. They said yes, he told her. She didn't cheer. Didn't cry. Just closed her eyes and whispered, thank you. But the relief was short-lived. Later that evening, as Eli was being prepped for surgery, 2 Child Protective Services officers arrived. They carried folders, clipboards, calm expressions that didn't quite hide their authority. We've arranged foster placements, one of them told Maya gently. You'll go to a home in Oak Ridge. Eli will stay here until he's stable, then move to a medical foster home in the North County. Maya froze. No, she said. We stay together. I'm sorry, the officer said. It's protocol. Siblings are often placed separately when one has medical needs. But he needs me. Maya's voice cracked. He won't eat if I'm not there. He won't sleep. He barely opens his eyes unless I'm talking to him. The doctor stepped in. Hold on. Eli's surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Separating them now could worsen his condition. Stress affects recovery, especially in trauma cases. The officers exchanged glances. We understand, one said. But we can't leave 2 unaccompanied minors in a hospital without supervision. Then supervise me, the doctor said. I'll be his temporary guardian. I've already started the paperwork. The officers looked surprised. You're a doctor, not a foster parent. I'm a human being, he said quietly. And right now, I'm the only stable adult in their lives. He didn't raise his voice, didn't argue. Just stood there, calm and firm like a tree that wouldn't bend in the wind. After a long pause, the officers relented. We'll delay placement until after surgery. But if temporary guardianship isn't approved within 72 hours, they go into the system separately. Maya didn't say a word. She just walked back to Eli's room, climbed onto his bed, and wrapped her arms around him, like she could shield him with her body alone. The night before surgery was long. Eli was given mild sedatives to help him rest. But he kept reaching for Maya's hand. She stayed beside him, telling him old stories, their mom's pancakes on Sundays. The stray cat they'd named Whiskers, the time they built a fort out of cardboard boxes in the back alley. The doctor checked in often, not as a surgeon, but as someone who'd started to care too much to stay detached around midnight. Maya asked, what if he forgets me while he's asleep? He won't, the doctor said. Your voice is inside him. Even when he's quiet, he hears you. Shh. She nodded, but tears slipped down her cheeks anyway. Morning came too fast. Nurses arrived with warm blankets and soft voices. They wheeled Eli's bed toward the operating wing. Maya walked beside it, holding his hand until the double doors of the OR. There. A kind-eyed anesthesiologist knelt and said, "You can give him one kiss before we take him in." Maya leaned down, pressed her forehead to Eli's, and whispered something only he could hear. Then the doors closed. She stood there, staring at the metal doors like they'd swallowed her whole world. The doctor didn't say it'll be okay. He just sat beside her on the hard plastic bench and stayed hours. Past to the surgery was tricky but clean. The tumor was smaller than they feared, about the size of a grape butt nestled deep. The neurosurgeon removed it piece by piece, careful not to disturb the delicate tissue around it. No bleeding. No complications. A textbook success, by all accounts. But success in the operating room didn't always mean success in life. When they brought Eli back to recovery, he was pale, wrapped in warm blankets, a bandage wrapped gently around his head. He didn't wake right away. That was normal. The anesthesia lingered. Maya sat by his side, silent now, watching his chest rise and fall. The doctor checked his vitals, reviewed the surgeon's notes, spoke quietly with the nurses. Everything looked good. Physically, Eli was stable. But as the hours stretched into afternoon, he still hadn't opened his eyes. Not really. Not like before. Maya began to panic. What if he never wakes up? She asked, voice trembling. He will, the doctor said. His brain needs time to heal. The pressure's gone now. That's the hardest part. But doubt crept in, even for him. What if the silence wasn't just from the tumor? What if it was grief so deep no surgery could reach it? Then, late that evening, as rain tapped softly against the window again, Eli stirred. His fingers twitched. His eyelids fluttered. And then in a voice so quiet it was almost a breath, he said one word. Maya. Tears poured down her face. She grabbed his hand, sobbing. I'm here, she whispered. I'm right here. He didn't say more. But he looked at her. He looked at her, lead-like tanned in his eyes as recognition, relief, and something like peace. The doctor watched from the doorway, throat tight. He'd seen thousands of recoveries. But this one felt different. This wasn't just medicine. This was love made visible. Later, as Maya finally slept in the chair, head resting on Eli's bed, the doctor sat at the nurse's station and filled out the last of the guardianship paperwork. He listed his address, his license number, his reason for request, to provide stability, continuity of care, and emotional support during critical recovery period. He didn't know if it would be approved. Didn't know what came next. But he knew this. These two kids had no one else. And he wouldn't let the system pull them apart now that they'd finally found a sliver of hope. Outside, City slept under a blanket of rain. Inside, a boy had spoken his sister's name again. And in that moment, everything felt possible. The days after surgery moved slower than anyone expected. Eli was awake more often now, eating small bites of applesauce, watching cartoons with half-lidded eyes, even managing a weak smile when Maya made up silly voices for the cartoon characters. But talking? That was still rare. Just a word here and there. Water, cold, Maya, always soft.
Right.
Like he was testing the sound of his own voice after so long. Maya never left his side. She slept in the chair, ate only when reminded, and flinched every time someone in a uniform walked past the door. The child services officers hadn't returned yet, but she knew they would. But now, he had tools. He had Maya, who knew his silence better than anyone. And he had someone who didn't try to fix him, just sat with him until the storm passed. Maya, too, had changed. The constant fear in her eyes had softened. She still checked the locks twice at night, still flinched at sudden noises, but she raised her hand in class now. She read books out loud. She even joined the school art club where she drew pictures of doctors with capes, brothers with speech bubbles full of stars. The temporary guardianship had been extended. Then extended again. And finally, after months of home visits, court hearings, and stacks of paperwork, it became permanent. Not adoption, neither of them wanted to erase the memory of their parents, but legal guardianship. A promise made official, they would never be separated again. Outside, the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in streaks of orange and pink. After dinner, the three of them walked to the nearby park, just like they did most evenings. Eli held a sketchbook under one arm. He'd started drawing again, detailed pictures of birds, trees, hospital rooms turned into castles. And always, always Maya, with a halo of sunlight around her head. At the park bench, their bench they sat. Fireflies blinked in the tall grass. Somewhere down the street, a piano played softly through an open window. "You remember the first night?" Maya asked suddenly, not looking at him, just watching the sky. "Which part?" the doctor asked. "When you carried Eli, and I thought you were going to call the police." "I remember," he said softly. "I thought no one would ever see us," she said. "Like we were invisible." "You were never invisible," he told her. "Just waiting to be found." Ali flipped open his sketchbook. On the last page was a new drawing. It showed a tall figure in a long coat standing under a streetlight, holding a small boy in his arms. Beside him, a girl clung to his sleeve. Above them, written in careful letters, "The night everything changed." Underneath, in smaller writing, "Thank you for seeing us." The doctor didn't say anything. He just put an arm around Eli's shoulders and let the quiet settle between them. Back home. As the kids brushed their teeth and changed into pajamas, the doctor checked his phone. A message from the hospital administrator. "Second Chances pilot program approved. Starts next month. You'll lead it." He smiled. The program's idea was real now. A mobile unit of nurses, social workers, and doctors who'd go into shelters. Train stations, even encampments, under bridges. Offering checkups, vaccines, mental health support, and a lifeline to families no one else saw. No paperwork required, no judgment, just help. He'd fought for it harder than he'd fought for anything in years. And now it was happening. Later. After tucking Eli in and listening to Maya read a chapter from her favorite book, the doctor stepped onto the back porch. The night was still. Stars glittered overhead. He leaned against the railing, breathing in the scent of jasmine and warm earth. He thought about how close they'd come to never meeting. One different turn, one extra hour at work, one harsh word from a stranger, and Eli might not have woken up. Maya might have disappeared into the system, lost forever. But life doesn't always hinge on grand moments. Sometimes it turns on a whisper, on someone choosing to stop, to kneel, to care. Inside, a light flicked on in Eli's room. A moment later, Maya appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket. "Can't sleep?" the doctor asked. She shook her head. "Had a good dream. Didn't want to lose it." "What was it about?" "Mom," she said softly. She was smiling. And she said, "You're safe now." He didn't say, "I'm glad." He just opened his arms, and she walked into them slowly at first. Then, like she'd been waiting all her life to be held without fear. They stood like that for a long time. Under the stars, in the quiet dark. When she finally pulled back, she looked at him with eyes that were no longer scared. "Just sure? You didn't just save Eli," she said. "You saved me too." He touched her hair gently. "You saved yourselves. I just handed you a rope." But they both knew it was more than that. It was the choice to stay, to show up, to believe that two kids with nothing but each other were worth fighting for. The next morning, Eli came downstairs holding a small, folded piece of paper. "For you," he said, placing it in the doctor's hand. It was a letter written in careful printing. "Dear Doctor, thank you for carrying me when I couldn't walk. Thank you for letting Maya stay with me. Thank you for the pancakes and the drawings and the quiet nights. You are my hero. Not because you fixed my brain, but because you stayed at the bottom." A scribble in Maya's handwriting. "We love you." The doctor folded the letter, put it in his shirt pocket right over his heart. That afternoon, they walked to the hospital not as patients, but as guests. The doctor had arranged a small celebration for the launch of the Second Chances program. Nurses clapped when they saw Eli. A few even cried. Maya gave a short speech, just 3 sentences, but her voice didn't shake. Before she said, "We were alone. Now we're not. And if this program helps even one kid feel seen, then it's worth it." Afterward, as they walked back home, Eli skipped ahead, chasing a butterfly. Maya walked beside the doctor, hands in her pockets. "You know," she said, "I used to think heroes wore capes or had superpowers. What do you think now?" He asked. She looked at him, really looked, and smiled. "I think heroes are just people who choose to care when it's easier not to." He didn't answer. He just walked a little taller. That night on the porch again, the 3 of them sat in silence, watching the moon rise over the rooftops. Eli leaned against Maya, half asleep. She hummed a tune their mother used to sing, and the doctor, once so certain that healing happened only in operating rooms, only with scalpels and scans, finally understood. The deepest healing doesn't come from fixing bodies. It comes from restoring belonging, from saying, without words, "You are not alone." And as the fireflies danced and the night wrapped around them like a promise, he knew this wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning of a life they'd build together. Not perfect, not easy, but there's full of pancakes, drawings, quiet nights, and love that had been found in the coldest dark. Cand had decided to stay. Copy. The fear lived in her shoulders, in the way she hugged her arms tight across her chest, like she was holding herself together. The doctor came by every morning and every evening, even on his days off. He didn't just check Eli's incision or review his labs. He brought books, puzzles, and once, a small stuffed dog he'd found in the hospital gift shop. Eli hadn't said thank you, but he'd tucked it under his arm and held it all night. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled through the blinds in warm stripes, the doctor sat across from Maya while Eli napped. "They'll be back soon," she said suddenly, not looking at him. The people from the agency, he didn't pretend not to know who she meant. "Yes. What if they say no?" Her voice was small. "What if they say you can't keep us together?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Then we'll fight harder." "But you're just a doctor," she said. "You don't even know us." "I know enough," he said. "And I'm not just anything when it comes to you too." She finally looked at him. "Why are you doing this, really?" He thought for a long time before answering. Outside, a bird landed on the windowsill, chirped once, and flew off. "When I was about your age," he said slowly, "my mom got sick. Real sick. We didn't have insurance. Didn't know where to go. We ended up sleeping in our car for a while. One night, a nurse saw us outside an emergency room, just me and my little brother, shivering under a blanket. She didn't call security. She brought us hot soup, let us wait inside, and stayed with us until a doctor came. That doctor didn't have to help us, but he did. Paid for my mom's medicine out of his own pocket. Got us into a shelter that took families. He changed everything." Maya listened, eyes wide. "I never forgot that," he said. "And I swore that if I ever had the chance to do the same for someone else, I wouldn't hesitate." She swallowed hard. "So you're helping us because of him?" "No," he said gently. "I'm helping you because you deserve to be helped. Because Eli deserves a chance. Because you've carried him through hell with nothing but love, and that's the kind of courage most adults never find." That night, the paperwork came through. Not all of it, but enough. The court had granted temporary emergency guardianship for 30 days. It wasn't permanent. It wasn't perfect. But it was a shield. For now, the system couldn't take them. When Maya heard the news, she didn't cry. She just hugged Eli so tight he giggled, actually giggled on, said, "You hear that? We get to stay together." The doctor felt something loosen in his chest. He hadn't realized how tightly he'd been holding his breath. The next hurdle was getting them out of the hospital. Eli was healing well, but he needed follow-up scans, speech therapy, a warm, quiet place to rest. The hospital couldn't keep them indefinitely. And shelters, too chaotic, too unstable. He made a call, an old friend, tired pediatric nurse who ran a small nonprofit that helped displaced families, agreed to open her guest house. It was a tiny cottage behind her home in a quiet neighborhood. Just 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a small yard with a lemon tree. No locks on the doors. No curfews. Just safety. Moving day came on a soft spring morning. Eli wore a new hoodie, a donation from the hospital's charity closet, his bandage now reduced to a small strip of gauze. Maya carried a backpack with their few belongings, a toothbrush, the stuffed dog, a notebook filled with her drawings. The doctor drove them himself. As they pulled up to the cottage, Kea stared out the window, stunned. "This is for us?" "For now," he said. "Just while Eli heals." She stepped out slowly, as if the ground might vanish beneath her. Eli held her hand, looking around with wide, curious eyes. A cat sunned itself on the porch. Wind chimes tinkled softly. Inside, the place smelled like cinnamon and clean sheets. There were blankets folded on the beds, fruit in a bowl on the table, and crayons and paper on the kitchen counter. Maya turned to the doctor, eyes shining. "It's real," he nodded. "And it's yours. For as long as you need." That week, life settled into a new rhythm. Eli started speech therapy via video call. A kind woman with a gentle voice coaxed words from him, first single syllables, then short sentences. He still didn't talk much when the screen went dark, but he'd look at Maya and whisper. She said, "I did good." Maya enrolled in a nearby school. The principal, moved by her story, arranged for tutoring after class and waived the uniform fees. On her first day, she wore the same 2 big jeans. But now she stood taller. The doctor visited every other day, not as a physician, but as someone who'd become part of their fragile new world. He'd bring groceries, help with homework, sit on the porch with a cup of tea while the kids played in the yard. One evening, as fireflies blinked in the dusk, Eli looked up from drawing and said, "You live far?" The doctor smiled. "Not too far. Do you have a brother?" Eli asked. "Yes," he said. "He lives in another state. We talk on the phone. Do you miss him?" "Sometimes," he admitted. Eli was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I missed Maya when I couldn't talk. Like I was underwater, and she was on the shore, calling me." The doctor's throat tightened. "You're not underwater anymore." Eli nodded. "Because you pulled me out." It wasn't praise. It was just truth, spoken simply. Then out of nowhere, a local news reporter showed up. Word had spread quietly at first about the doctor who took in 2 homeless kids, fought the system, and saved a boy's life. A nurse had mentioned it to a friend, who told a journalist looking for human interest stories. The reporter was polite, respectful, didn't bring cameras at first, just a notebook. "I'd like to share your story," she said. "Not to make you famous, but to show people that kindness still exists, and to highlight how many kids like Eli and Maya are out there forgotten, scared, invisible." The doctor hesitated. He didn't want attention, didn't want to exploit their pain, but Maya surprisingly spoke up. "Will it help other kids?" she asked. The reporter nodded. "It could. It might make people care more. Donate, volunteer, push for change." Maya looked at the doctor. "Then tell it." So he did, but on his terms. No photos of Eli's face. No last names. No dramatic music or tearful reenactments. Just a simple article, a doctor's choice. It told the story plainly, how a whisper in the cold led to a surgery, a fight, and a promise kept. The response was overwhelming. Letters poured in. Donations flooded the hospital's charity fund. Schools reached out about youth homelessness programs. Even the mayor sent a note of thanks. But the doctor didn't care about that. What mattered was watching Maya laugh while helping Eli practice new words. What mattered was seeing Eli reach for his sister's hand, not out of fear, but out of habit, because she was just there always. One afternoon, the doctor found Maya sitting on the back steps, staring at the sky. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I was just thinking. Before that night, I thought the world was only cold and loud and mean. But then you showed up." He sat beside her. "The world is still cold sometimes, But it's also full of people who care. You just have to find them. Or become one. She leaned her head on his shoulder, just for a second, then pulled away, shy. I want to be a nurse, she said suddenly. Yeah, so I can stay with kids when they're scared. Like you stayed with us. He didn't say you can do it. Didn't need to. The way she said it, she already knew. That night, back at his own quiet apartment, the doctor sat at his desk and started drafting a proposal. Not for himself, for the hospital. A new program. Outreach teams that go into shelters, under bridges. Bus stations, places most doctors never see, to find kids like Maya and Eli before they collapse in doorways, he called it. Second chances. Because everyone deserves one. And as he typed, he thought of the whisper that started it all. The voice in the dark that dared to ask for help. He hadn't just saved a boy that night. He'd been saved, Tory-minded, of why he'd become a doctor in the first place. Not for awards. Not for titles. But for moments like this, when hope is fragile, and someone chooses to carry it anyway. Spring had settled into the city like a long-held breath finally released. The air was warm but not hot, the trees full of green instead of ghosts, the sidewalks buzzed with people walking without coats for the first time in months. At the back of a quiet neighborhood, behind a white picket fence and a blooming jasmine vine, a small cottage glowed with golden light in the early evening inside. Laughter spilled from the kitchen. Eli stood on a step stool, carefully stirring a bowl of pancake batter while Maya counted the blueberries aloud. 1, 2, 10. Dropping them in one by one. Flour dusted Eli's nose, and Maya had a smear of it on her cheek. They were making dinner, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Because they could. A year ago, they wouldn't have known what a measuring cup was. Now, they had favorite recipes scribbled on index cards, stuck to the fridge with magnets shaped like stars. The doctor sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea, watching them with a quiet kind of joy he hadn't known existed. He wasn't in scrubs tonight. Just jeans and a soft cotton shirt, sleeves rolled up. He didn't need to be the doctor here. Here, he was just there, steady. Present. Eli looked over. You like blueberry pancakes, right? Yes, the doctor said with a smile. Especially when they're made by the best chefs in the city. Maya grinned. That's us. It hadn't been easy. Not even close. The first few months after surgery were fragile. Eli still had bad days when the words wouldn't come, when the world felt too loud, when he'd curl up in a corner and shut down.